Genghis Khan, who eliminated the Nayman kingdom and subjugated the Tatars, Merkits, Tayuts, Karaits and Kyrgyz to himself, dominated the whole of Mongolia and established a great Mongol empire. In 1206, he gathered all the tribes that had been bound to him and convened a great assembly. Genghis Khan also announced his law called Genghis Law at the assembly. The adulterer would be executed regardless of who he was. Livata, that is, those who had intercourse between men and men, would be executed. No taxes would be levied on Muslims who read the Holy Quran, lawyers, physicians, scholars, and those who devoted themselves to worship and asceticism. All religions would be respected and no discrimination would be made between any religion. He announced to everyone that it was forbidden to use bad and immoral words, that women would go to war with their men, that unmarried girls would be presented to Genghis Khan at the beginning of each year, that a postal organization would be established, that those who killed a man would be executed in the same way, that the elderly would be respected, and that he had appointed his son Chagatai to enforce the laws. With these laws, Genghis Khan aimed for three things: absolute obedience to Genghis Khan, unification of the nomadic tribes, and merciless punishment of those who committed crimes. Mongol society was unorganized before Genghis Khan. At the 1206 Kurultai, the military and social organization of the state was also organized. Genghis Khan appointed his appointees on merit, not according to tribal hierarchy. The key word was loyalty. In 1206, Genghis Khan formed a guard unit, the Kasiks, which grew to 10 men. It was a great honor to be able to join the monkhood, which trained commanders and administrators for the expanding empire and prioritized loyalty to Genghis Khan. With the help of shamans, he was able to perfectly channel tribal loyalty to him. The Mongol Empire achieved its true formation as a state only with the full participation of the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs, who had settled down and had a brilliant civilization in terms of literature, art and trade, voluntarily joined the Mongols, and the Mongols showed a rapid cultural rise. Since the Mongols were an illiterate nomadic tribe, the Uyghur alphabet was adapted for Mongolian, and Uyghur aristocrats began to occupy important positions in the state. At the time of Genghis Khan, there were three states in today's China: the Xia dynasty, also known as the Tangut Kingdom, around Kansu, the Jin dynasty in the north, and the Song dynasty in the south. Genghis Khan wanted to make a great campaign against the Jin dynasty, the sworn enemy of the Mongols. But the Jin dynasty was a powerful and long-established state. Until then, Genghis Khan had only fought wars with nomadic tribes. He had never besieged a city or defended a fortress. Therefore, instead of attacking the Jin dynasty first, he wanted to test the value of his army by attacking the Tanguts, the weakest of the three states that shared Chinese territory. He also planned that if he dominated the Tanguts, he would control the road to Turkestan and encircle the Jin dynasty, the sworn enemy of the Mongols, from the west. The battle against the Tangut Kingdom, a Tibetan and Buddhist kingdom in the Kansu region, would be Genghis Khan's first campaign against a settled and civilized nation. Genghis Khan prepared his army and moved against the Tangut Kingdom in 1207. The Tanguts, however, preferred to hide behind strong fortifications rather than bring an army against Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan then laid siege to Vulahay, one of the most important cities of the Tanguts. While the majority of his army besieged the city, others plundered the countryside. But the Mongols, perfectly organized to destroy enemy forces in open terrain, were clearly inexperienced in taking fortified positions. Genghis Khan kept thinking about how to capture the fortress and consulted with his commanders. At the end of the long siege, Genghis Khan sent an envoy to the castle to inform them that the siege would be lifted if they surrendered the messenger birds in the city. Surprised by such a trivial condition, the Tanguts immediately complied. They handed over all the birds in the city to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan then had the birds tie pieces of straw to their feet and set them on fire. Frightened and engulfed in flames, the birds began to return to their nests. After a short time, the birds returned to the city by burning and started a fire in the city, and the city suddenly started to burn in flames. Taking advantage of the big fires in the city, the Mongol army was able to easily capture the city by climbing the castles with ladders. Having captured the city of Vulahay in this way, Genghis Khan then laid siege to Chongqing, the capital of the Tanguts. This city was stronger and bigger than Vulahay. Using the captives he captured from the Tanguts, he tried to divert the Huanghe River, which supplied the city with water, and tried to make the city surrender by leaving it without water, but they failed to build a dam that could stop the river. When the river overflowed with autumn rains, the Mongol camp was flooded. Genghis Khan considered lifting the siege. But Mongol soldiers continued to plunder the countryside. Eventually, the Tangut king sent an envoy to Genghis Khan and offered peace. He gave his daughter Chaka to Genghis Khan and asked to be his right-hand man. If the Mongols asked, the Tanguts would send an army, as well as camels, a regular tribute of hunting falcons, wool and silk fabrics. Under these terms, a treaty of subordination was concluded, and the Tangut king, Li Anshi, pledged his allegiance to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan had subjugated the Tanguts, gained experience in capturing cities, partially controlled the road to Turkestan, and pinched his sworn enemy, the Jin dynasty, from the west before the great Jin campaign he had planned for the time being. No one in the Mongol lands had forgotten the torture and humiliation suffered by Genghis Khan's great-grandfather Ambakai Khan at the court in Beijing. Ambakai died while being tortured in Chinese dungeons. So for Genghis Khan, conquering the Jin Empire was a matter of revenge. In 1208, the Jin Emperor Mataku died. Emperor Chonghe succeeded him. As a young man, Genghis Khan fought the Tatars with Ongkhan, but ever since he had united with the Jin, he had been regarded by them as a subject ruler and paid tribute to the Jin dynasty. Now, with both Ongkhan dead and the Jin Emperor Mataku dead, Genghis Khan considered himself freed from allegiance to the Jin dynasty. The new Emperor Chonghe sent an envoy to Genghis Khan, asking him both to renew his allegiance and to pay tribute. The custom was for Genghis Khan to kneel before the envoy and pledge his loyalty. But Genghis Khan refused to kneel, saying, "Is a fool like Chonghe worthy of the throne, and should I kneel before him?" and spat at the envoy. When the new emperor Chonghe received this news, he was so angry that he had the Mongol envoys executed. Genghis Khan convened an assembly after this incident. After consultation, the Mongol Empire declared war on the Jin Empire. In March 1211, the Mongols gathered 90 troops for a campaign against the Jin Empire. They left only 20 troops behind to protect their bases in Mongolia. This meant that more than 90% of the Mongol forces were mobilized for the campaign. The Jin Empire had an enormous population and a large army. The army under the emperor consisted of 800 0 infantry and 150 0 cavalry. The Mongols advanced to the Great Wall of China without encountering any force. At that time, the Great Wall of China was guarded by the Ongut Turks on behalf of the Jin Empire. Alakush Tegin, the chief of Ongut, sent an envoy to Genghis Khan and declared his allegiance. Genghis Khan married his daughter Beki to Alakush's son. In this way, the gates of the Great Wall of China were opened for the Mongols. Quickly crossing the Great Wall, the Mongol army split into two. The 30-strong vanguard was led by Jebe and Subutai, while the main army was led by Genghis Khan. While the vanguard advanced on the garrison in Datong, the main army under Genghis Khan marched to the Yaoling Pass. 450,000 soldiers from the Jin army were waiting for the Mongols at the pass. The garrison in Datong was destroyed by Subutai. The fleeing Jin soldiers retreated to the Woishai fortress. Genghis Khan then ordered his son Jebe and Subutai to attack the Woishai fortress. Waiting at the Yaoling Pass, the Jin army held its position for months. Subutai and Jebe also eliminated the garrison at Woishai and executed the commanders. They then joined Genghis Khan's army waiting at the Yaoling Pass. Genghis Khan's army of 90,000 men launched a formidable offensive against the Jin Empire's army of 800,000. After the powerful Mongol pressure, the soldiers of the Jin Empire began to retreat. Genghis Khan sent Subutai and Jebe over the hills towards the Jin soldiers. The Jin soldiers thought it was impossible for horse troops to come over the hills, so they did not take any security measures on that side. But when they saw the Mongol troops charging, they were all shocked. The Mongols started attacking from two sides. Jebe, one of the best Mongol generals, made a false retreat at this time. The Jin soldiers fell into this trap and began to follow the Mongol horsemen, but the Mongols had left a small group as bait and hid in the forests. The Jin soldiers who went after the cornered Mongol soldiers were surrounded by Mongol soldiers coming out of the forests, and all of them were slaughtered. Then JB's soldiers went back to support the main army and saw the Jin army scattering and fleeing. Emperor Chonghe barely escaped with his life in this battle. The Jin army took refuge in the fortresses in and around Beijing, avoiding a pitched battle and choosing to defend themselves in the fortresses. It was such a terrible battle that the ground was littered with corpses. The Taoist monk Shang Sun, who passed through here 9 years later, reported watching the whitened human bones stretching into infinity. In this battle, the Jin army lost 450,000 men. This was the first and greatest victory of the Mongols over the Chinese army. The Mongol armies then split up and began to plunder the countryside and Chinese villages. There was no Jin army to defend against them. They were waiting in their fortresses to defend against the Mongol army. The Mongols then began to lay siege to many fortresses and cities. Those who surrendered were either taken as slaves or brutally slaughtered. But engineers, merchants, doctors, teachers, clergy and administrators were spared and asked to join the Mongol army. Day after day, news of these massacres reached Beijing and spread fear among the Chinese. Meanwhile, in Beijing, a palace drama shook the Jin dynasty. The Jin Emperor Chonghe had been assassinated by an officer named Hu Shahu and replaced by his nephew Wu Tupu. Unfortunately, this new emperor was as impotent as his predecessor. Nevertheless, Genghis Khan had not evolved to sustain a regular siege. Always cautious, he accepted Wu Tupu's peace offer, despite the impatience of his generals. The Jin Empire paid an enormous war indemnity, including gold, silk, 3,000 horses, thousands of young male and female slaves, and the Princess of Georgia for Genghis Khan himself. Genghis Khan and his army retreated to Karakoram with this huge war payment and the spoils of war they had captured. As soon as the Mongols left, the Jin Emperor Wu Tupu, who saw Beijing as too vulnerable to danger, left the capital and went to settle in Kaifengfu. This was a flight. Genghis Khan interpreted this departure as the imminent resumption of the war and took advantage of it to break the armistice himself. He quickly turned his army back and marched again to lay siege to Beijing. When he had previously laid siege to this fortified city, he realized that he could not capture it with his nomadic army of mounted troops. He had therefore recruited Chinese engineers and engineers. Using the engineers he had captured from the Chinese, Genghis Khan mapped the city of Beijing and consulted with his commanders to determine how and from which direction to attack the city. The city walls were very large and very thick. Much thought was given to how to capture the fortress, and as a result, Chinese engineers were used to build large siege towers and catapults, and dikes were built in front of the rivers flowing into the city. All entrances and exits to the city were blocked. The Mongol army bombarded the city with catapults for 6 months, waiting for hunger and thirst to set in. The people of Beijing knew well the Mongols' looting of other Chinese cities, so they were terrified. Hunger and thirst eventually struck the city, and the Chinese tried to survive by eating their dead. Genghis Khan had killed so many people and captured so many slaves in the Chinese cities he had previously sacked that just feeding the slaves had become quite a challenge. Genghis Khan decided to turn the situation to his advantage by using these slaves as meat shields. He forced the Chinese captives to push the battle towers, to fight in the front line, and to stand at the gate with battering rams. Thus, after a long wait and a lot of effort, the Mongol army began to storm the city. From their fortresses, Chinese archers unleashed a terrific rain of arrows on the Mongols. Large stones thrown from the catapults used by the Mongols smashed the walls of Beijing. The Chinese were not idle in the face of these catapults, and using advanced techniques they threw fireballs made of flammable materials at the Mongols. The Chinese archers soon lost a great deal of motivation when they realized that the people they were killing with their arrows were their own relatives. Their own brothers and even their own children had been captured by the Mongols. With every arrow they shot, they could hit their own son or brother. Unable to bear this situation any longer, the Chinese archers stopped shooting. Meanwhile, the Mongol soldiers who had climbed the walls and entered through the collapsed walls began to slaughter the Chinese. Finally, the city fell. After this victory, Genghis Khan ordered the ruthless looting of the entire city. The Mongol soldiers left no house untouched, no girl unkidnapped, no valuables stolen, no person unkilled. The atrocities committed by the Mongol army in Beijing, the pieces of corpses rotting on the ground, the fields covered with human bones, the epidemics that broke out from these piles of corpses were observed and written down by the Khwarezm Shah envoy Bahaiddin Raza, who witnessed the events himself. The Mongols had set fire to the entire city with its inhabitants. This ruthless destruction lasted for a month. It was very difficult to transport gold, silver, silk and valuables back to Mongolia. The Jin dynasty was stuck with its new capital Kaifengfu and a city in Shenxi. Genghis Khan realized that it would take a long time to conquer all of China, so he turned his attention to Turkestan, handing over the conquest and administration to one of his generals, Mukuli. After the Mongol conquest of northern China, the Mongol Empire took advantage of all the riches of China and became the richest state of the time. The capitals of the whole world were now closely interested in what was happening in China. The Khwarezm Shah ruler Sultan Alauddin Muhammad Khwarezm Shah could not believe that China, which he wanted to conquer himself, had fallen into the hands of the Mongols. He sent a delegation led by Sayyid Bahauddin Razi to China to verify the truth of the news. When the Khwarezm Shah envoys arrived at the Chinese frontier, they witnessed this enormous atrocity in person.